and what their job is. Because their job that we've talked about up to this point is filtration. And we are looking at the part where we are forming the urine. And there are going to be different stages that take place in the formation of urine, because at the point we're talking about right now, stage 1, which is the glomerular filtration, and at this point we cannot call it urine because we're not at that point. Right now we're only creating the filtrate. So at this point, it cannot be called urine. And so I was trying to find a video, and y'all can hear the stuff on YouTube, and it's just, oh, this is horrible. Unless you just want to hear another person, you know, talking to you about urine formation. So this is the one that comes with the textbook. I haven't watched it, okay, so I don't know what it's going to do. But let's give it a whirl and see what it tries to tell us, because I did notice that it did get down to the nephron. So let's see what it does.
One of the primary functions of the kidney is better understood at the level of the nephron. In forming urine, the nephron functions to remove metabolic wastes from blood while regulating the volume and composition of body fluids. Urine formation begins in the renal corpuscle, where blood passing through the glomerulus is filtered. Filtrates include water, ions, and other solutes, which are filtered out of the blood and into the capsular space to begin urine formation. Urine passes into the proximal convoluted tubule, then into the nephron loop. The nephron concentrates urine by the process of the countercurrent multiplication system. The countercurrent multiplication system is basically the means by which water and sodium are extracted from the filtrate as it passes through the tubules toward the collecting ducts. This system is called countercurrent because of the dynamics set up by the hairpin turn of the loop of Henle. The direction of flow in the descending limb of the loop is opposite from the direction of flow in the ascending limb. By flowing in opposite directions in such close proximity, a unique interaction occurs. The loop of Henle dips from the cortex of the kidney into the medulla and is surrounded by the medullary interstitial fluid. The countercurrent multiplication system is responsible for not only elevating the concentration of urine in the loop, but more importantly, it elevates the concentration of the interstitial fluid as well. To explain the countercurrent multiplication system, we must first imagine the loop filled with a stationary column of glomerular fluid, which includes water, salt, and urea. At first, the concentration of the glomerular fluid and the surrounding interstitial fluid will be equal at an osmolarity of 300 milliosmoles. Within the walls of the thick segment of the ascending limb, special pumps extract salt, sodium chloride, from the fluid and transport it to the interstitium. The two areas no longer have an equal osmotic pressure, and a gradient has been established. Within the thick segment, the concentration is at 200 milliosmoles, whereas in the medullary tissue, the concentration is at 400 milliosmoles. Over time, a net diffusion of salt into the descending limb and a net diffusion of water out of the descending limb results in a balance in osmolarity between the descending limb and the surrounding interstitium. Because the thick segment is still actively pumping out salt, the osmolarity of the ascending limb is still 200 milliosmoles, and the interstitium and descending limb are balanced at 400. Salt accumulates in the medulla while water is drawn out of the fluid in the descending limb. Water is removed by the vasa recta, which are capillaries that surround the loops. In real life, operation of this gradient occurs while the fluid is flowing. Fluid flowing in from the proximal tubule and out to the distal tubule, along with the constant pumping of salt into the medulla, contributes to the multiplication of this gradient. As fluid follows the path of the loop, an increasing amount of water is extracted as it reaches the bottom, and an increasing amount of salt is pumped out as the fluid reaches the top. The more salt pumped out, the higher the concentration in the medulla. The higher the concentration in the medulla, the more water is extracted. Eventually, the levels of osmotic pressure are equal horizontally, with the highest value being at the tip of the loop. This level is at 1,400 milliosmoles per liter, which is also the value of the maximal osmolarity of excreted urine. As you can see, fluid becomes more concentrated as it rounds the loop, but it immediately becomes rediluted as it reaches the top. Final concentration of the fluid occurs in the collecting ducts, as it must travel back through the concentrated interstitium of the medulla on its way to the calyces. Urine is concentrated even further in the collecting ducts. The collecting duct must transport urine back through the concentration gradient formed by the nephron loop. The walls of the collecting duct are permeable to water, but not to salt. Therefore, an increasing amount of water is drawn out by osmosis as the fluid travels through the gradient. The gradient provides the force for the concentration of urine, but the rate is determined by the amount of antidiuretic hormone, ADH, in the blood. An increase in ADH in the blood causes the collecting ducts to become more permeable to water. Less urine is secreted and it is more concentrated. A decrease in ADH results in a decrease in water removed, thus a larger volume of more dilute urine is excreted.
All right, well, that's 4 minutes and 51 seconds of our life we're not going to get back. Did anybody else kind of, seriously, did y'all understand anything that he said? Okay.
The
Yeah.
first 30 seconds.
Huh?
The first 30 seconds.
Right, right. I didn't realize there was going to be so much focus on the countercurrent multiplier. And it is a system that is important, but it's not really what I was looking for the point we're at. So 4 minutes and 51 seconds, we are not going to get back of our life. But that's okay, because I will try to explain what he just went over in a little bit better way than he did, okay? Notice that it was kind of fast talking and everything like that. Really what he was telling you, first of all, did you kind of pick up on the milliosmoles? Okay? Have you heard that term before? Yeah, you have, because we've talked about osmoles here in this course. And I mentioned that everything would be given to you on reports in the term of milliosmoles, because that's the concentration we have to be at. And that is something that you're going to come across when you see a patient chart, okay? Now, the way that he was explaining it was a little fast, was a little quick. So in terms of that countercurrent multiplier that he was talking about, I'll try to explain it to you in a little bit better format than what he did, okay? So I was hoping we could find something on this glomerular filtration, since that's the point that we're at, but evidently it's not going to happen. So we left off at this point of urine formation at stage 1, and we left off talking about the structure of our glomerulus. One of the things that I want to remind you of is right now, at this point, we are in this glomerular capsule, all right? And we're talking about what has happened in this basically ball of capillaries, okay, where the blood has come in and has basically moved through this structure, and due to the structure of the glomerulus, we have now pushed those materials out into this capsular space. And that was what was at the, in the video.
One of the primary functions of the kidney is better understood at the level of the nephron.
Okay, so they're trying to show you the blood that's beginning to make its way into this efferent and afferent arteriole. Do you kind of see the blood flow that they're giving us? Okay? And the blood flowing into this capsule, because here is my capsule. And then as the blood moves in, it did kind of give you a representation of materials getting pushed out in this glomerulus.
In forming urine, the nephron functions to remove metabolic wastes from blood while regulating the volume and composition of body fluids. Urine formation begins in the renal corpuscle, where blood passing through the glomerulus.
The urine formation starts here in the glomerulus, where the blood filtration starts. That's exactly what he just said, okay? And they're trying to show or give the representation of the structure of this ball of capillaries, which is wrapped in that filtration membrane that we talked about. And they're trying to show the flow of the materials through this filtration membrane. And it flows out the stuff such as the water, the salt, the glucoses, urea, stuff like that we mentioned. So that is about the only representation right now we have at this point right here. So it does show the structure and the different amounts or the different materials that are flowing out for this particular structure. So that material is pushing out into this capsule, and it is creating the fluid that we're going to know as our filtrate. All right? Now, at this point, we are going to see that this glomerular filtration, it has a normal rate that should occur. A normal amount that should be flowing through this through the kidneys per day. Now, we can take tests and we can determine what this rate is. So for example, right now, you could have tests done and they would let you know what your filtration rate of your kidneys is. Now, in a normal, healthy male, roughly in his 20s, he's going to filter about 180 liters per day. This means those two kidneys, this is the amount of fluid that is going to pass through his kidneys. Like I said, we cannot urinate out that much, okay? In a female, normal, healthy female, roughly in her 20s, it will filter about 150 liters per day. But we are not going to urinate out that much. So, of this amount that is actually passing through the kidneys, only a very small amount is going to exit the body. When it exits the body, it's doing so in the form of urine.